Hey friends, it's Jen. Welcome back to the Homes That Heal podcast. Before I get into introducing my guest today, I want to remind you about the gift I created just for you. I put together a home wellness checklist so it's easy for you to get started on designing your own beautiful sacred space. It's loaded with inspiration and actionable ways you can bring more peace, love, and wellness into your home. I basically bundled up my favorite tips, tools, and techniques so you can transform and harmonize your life. It's fun, it's free, and it's waiting for you to download over at jenhellerlifestyle.com. Also, for those interested in getting a sauna for your home or business, many of you have reached out. Please know you can find all the details on the Jen Heller Lifestyle site on the infrared sauna page. Just click on the link to message me directly with your questions, or if you decide to call Clearlight directly instead of connecting with me, just please be sure to let them know Jen Heller sent you for special pricing and a free gift. Okay, so I am really excited to share with you my conversation with Steve Frazier about Orgonites and the importance of mitigating and neutralizing EMF exposure in your home. This is a hot topic and one I get asked about all the time. I've known Steve for many years. He is actually my friend Alex's dad. Alex was on the show a couple months ago. She owns Symmetry Natural Health in central Wisconsin. We were talking about how she stepped into natural health, and it was driven by her son's vaccine injury and autism. So her entire family pretty much rallied around Max Health, and Steve, being the serial entrepreneur and loving, devoted grandpa, decided to research and then create Orgonites for their entire family in their homes. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is an Orgonite? Great question. You've most likely seen them online, though, maybe at a gem or crystal store, or maybe in a boutique or gift shop. But it's a combination of resin-specific crystals and metals, often in the shape of a pyramid. But they can also be smaller, more personal size, like a flower. A rose is a very common flower that you might see. They're also pendants or pendulums, so you can wear it, put it in your pocket, or even carry it in a personal bag. I have a bunch of pyramids in my home, particularly in my office, plus a couple roses I carry when I travel. So Steve will get into the details, plus you can visit his site or Facebook page to see pictures and learn more about the interesting history and all other benefits. Overall, I truly hope you find this conversation valuable and are able to take away a few actionable steps towards safeguarding and harmonizing your own home and workspace. A little about Steve. He's not only one of the most kind, high-vibe guys I know, he's deeply passionate and has dedicated his life to learning and helping others live a healthy, vibrant life. In addition to making Orgonites and educating on their health benefits, Steve is also a business coach with a high-vibe energy to help others succeed in their overall goals. It's an honor to know him and to have him on my show. So without further ado, please enjoy and welcome Steve Frazier to the show. Are you struggling with low energy, weight gain, hormonal imbalances, or heavy metal and mold toxicity? Do you want to learn more about anti-aging tips and creating more longevity in your life? Well, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jen Heller, a wellness educator, infrared sauna expert, and home health consultant. In this podcast, Homes That Heal, I will teach you how to transform your home into a health and wellness sanctuary. Your health is your wealth, and I believe that your home should be your sanctuary space, loaded with the tools you need to thrive in your life, not just survive. If you want to feel fantastic and transform your life and home, grab a pen, let's dive in and create a home that heals. Okay, Steve, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, we are going to have quite the conversation today because, as I've mentioned before, outside of infrared saunas, which is my wheelhouse and one of my favorite topics, ways that you can protect your home and your life, and EMF is electromagnetic frequency, is one of the most asked questions that is brought to me. It's in my inbox almost every day. People are always asking about EMFs and how they can protect their home. And so Steve is the expert, not only an entrepreneur for many, many years, as well as runs a couple of businesses as a coach, but he is an expert, in my opinion, in EMFs. And I wanted to have him on today to just have a conversation, just have a candid conversation about how we can protect our home, what types of things inside of our home might be inviting these frequencies. And without further ado, Steve, I'm going to give the floor to you with 2 questions right out of the gate. One, I'd like for you I'd like for you to help describe what an EMF is and why it's important to shield, but also your story. How did you get into this? Why is this so important to you?
Okay, so we'll hit the EMF thing first. Okay, all electrical things put off a field or a frequency. Okay, you can use those words kind of interchangeably. If you want to get picky, you might not want to do that, but I don't really care because it's the effect that they're having, right? So you have lights, which may or may not have any effect on us, right? Depending on now the new ones maybe do, the old ones didn't. But then you go up the ladder to cell phones, to routers, to the cell towers on the streets. Okay. And if any of you have noticed this, I had a box phone in 1992. Okay. I had one of the first phones, right? And I had great reception in 3 places. Okay. Otherwise, it didn't work, right? Because there weren't any towers. Now we have 5G. And I have the worst cell phone reception now than I've had for the last 20 years. And so this propaganda that's being put out that 5G is for better service and reception, personal opinion, I don't believe that. I believe they have ulterior motives, okay? My phone still works, don't misunderstand me, but there's too many times when it doesn't work, and it always worked. It used to always work, okay? I also just got a new phone, Galaxy Samsung 24S, right? And I have a EMF meter, and my old phone barely registered on that, and my new phone, it goes off the scale. Now, all these things are emitting things, as in X-rays, CAT scans, all these things, they're all emitting things that are harmful. Now, what we do in our house is we take supplements to detox from this, okay? I'll get into a little more of that when I go into the history here. So we'll just go to that. But the EMFs, everything that's electrical is emitting something. And if you have some wires in your houses that aren't protected well, they're actually throwing off stuff. You had Alex, my daughter, Alex Hardinger, on a couple of weeks ago, and she had a client who was extremely ill. And Alex couldn't figure it out, couldn't figure out what was going on. And here she was sleeping 2 feet away from the smart meter on the outside of her house.
No.
Okay. And so first thing Alex did was told her she had to move. So she moved to the other side of the house in a different bedroom.
Yeah.
And started to feel better right away. And then she gives her their supplements that you can take that will detox this out of you, which my wife has to do regularly. But, that's just an example of something that there's a battle there, and I'm not going to get into it on whether you can get the utility company to get that meter off and go back to an analog.
Right.
Okay, but they're brutal. They're brutal. And baby monitors, I should have included because they're the single highest EMF producer in your home.
No kidding.
Oh, yes. And
I had no idea.
If you have one on your baby's crib, man, you are blasting your poor child, and then you wonder why they're not happy. Okay, now they get better when they go away from the monitor. I could go on, but we'll cell phones, routers, cell towers, hotspots, the things outside your house, the baby monitors.
Yeah.
And so, how did I get into this? Well, 12 years ago, my grandson was vaccine injured. And my wife and I were normal people. And I'm not criticizing anybody for being normal, and I'm not judging them. What happens is when you find out some of the things in life that you believed are not true, then what happens is that your whole world gets tipped upside down. So, Mac was vaccine injured. Alex went into the health field, was able to detox him to where he is normal. And at the same time, my wife got sick. And she went 2 years undiagnosed, and we saw 17 doctors, and she was almost dead. And Alex said, I'm coming over. She came over 15 minutes after Alex tested her. She said, you have Lyme disease from the waist down. So she had Lyme disease for 2 years undiagnosed. Now, anybody that knows anybody that's had Lyme disease, you realize the longer you have it, the damage to your organs. So that was 10 years ago. She got it 12 years ago. So she's still recovering, but she's alive and has some great days, some not so good days. But So what happened then, we jumped into these things. And then one of the damages that were done to her was damage to her MTHFR gene, which methylates in your body, methylates toxins. MTHFR is a one word, and it's so long that they just made it into letters, but it's a gene, and hers was damaged. And before Alex got a hold of her, they took my wife's gallbladder out, okay, which just had sludge in it, which we could have detoxed with supplements in 3 days. She'd have been clean. Point being is that we started to learn, okay, well, then one of the things that was happening because of this methylation problem is Brenda was holding on to EMFs, harmful, and she'd go in and see Alex, and then Alex would detox her. I mean, one time, Brenda, at one point, she was a brick and mortar teacher. She's a college professor, and she went into a Marshfield clinic. She walked past the x-ray room to go to the conference room and went to see Alex the next day, and Alex tested her and said, I don't know what's going on here, but you are so full of radiation. Well, what did you do? And she didn't go get x-rayed. She walked past it. Now, realize that my wife is an anomaly. Okay. She's unique and very special to me. Anyway. Okay.
Very well said. Very well said.
I had to be really careful there.
Yes, you did.
She's not you and I. I mean, I can go and get x-rays, I mean, even when she goes to the dentist, it's an issue. So she detoxes, takes a bunch of supplements. So what happened is Alex found a guy out in New York that was making Orgonite pyramids. His name was Lenny Revelle, and he passed away a couple of years ago of cancer. And so we bought a couple of his, and then one day I was going to buy all my grandchildren a pyramid for Christmas because I thought they needed it, especially just by their nightstand, or next to their bed. And Alex said, well, why don't you just make them, Dad? And I had looked at it, and I said, nah, it's just too much. It's too much putzing around. And 3 days later, I started to make them. Okay. Yeah. So if your kids ever tell you something, look out, because man, there's ways. They have ways, apparently.
What an inspiration, right?
It's the best thing that I ever did. One of the best things that I ever did. So I started to make them. You practice, and at that time, we were testing this purely with muscle testing, which is what Alex does. We can actually test a pyramid. Now, I know that this doesn't help the people that are out there, but this pyramid,
we'll be able to see. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a foot. It's about 14, 16 inches big. This has never left my house. When I took it out of my basement, my wife would not let it leave the house. That has a field of probably 30 to 40 feet.
Awesome.
Okay, so that means that if you're within that field, no EMFs are going to harm you. You will be affected by them, which I'll get into in a little while, but you will be affected by them because this does not shield you. And at the end of this, when I wrap this up, we'll talk about some other mitigations. Okay. And then I have this one here, this is right next to it. This is another one that never left my house. This is with shungite and copper. I have enough of these in my house for everybody on the podcast, right? So anyway,
careful what you wish for, Steve.
Yeah, I'm not giving them to you though. Sorry.
No, we're going to direct everybody to your site where I saw you had some really beautiful Jimmy Buffett ones, by the way, for the Jimmy Buffett fans.
I made those last year after he passed away. So
I love it.
We were fortunate enough to be able to travel with Alex and go to some seminars of MFT, Dr. Frank Sprigov. Mm-hmm. And we traveled literally around the country, and we sold wholesale to chiropractors, to MFT practitioners. I had at one time probably 20 to 40 wholesale accounts. Then COVID hit, that was it. Mm-hmm. That was it, literally. But what I found there, and a lot of my experiences or testimonials came from the people in the room. And we were in Chicago, and I only had a half an hour, usually on Sunday mornings. It was a 2-day seminar. And we had all our stuff there for them to look at and buy. But on Saturday, I had like 15 minutes, and I was talking about some things, and 5 different people in the room said, could we take one with us tonight and see what happens, right? Because most of them are in hotels, right? And I don't know if you realize this, but hotels are one of the worst places.
Yes.
Because you are getting just whammy, Wi-Fi and everywhere there's routers. And so I gave 5 pyramids out to these people. They all came back on Sunday morning. I'm there at 9:00. And the first thing I did, I have confidence in what I do. And I said, so tell me what your experiences were. And the first lady, she literally stood up and she said, last night I resolved a dream conflict that I have had for 5 to 10 years. I resolved it, and I dreamt in color for the first time in my memory. Okay, with that pyramid next to her head.
Goosebumps.
Yeah,
Totally
that's
just
right.
got the body.
And I got them too. Okay, and I, and this is years and years ago.
Oh my
So then
gosh.
another girl gets up, and she said, I had my friend. We were in Chicago. She was from up northern Wisconsin. Her friend who lived in Chicago came and stayed with her in double beds, and they put it in the middle.
Mhm.
And she said, I have never slept well in a hotel room in my life. And she's a chiropractor. She travels regularly. She said, last night I slept like I was in my own bed. Okay. And then the next three went on to say the same thing.
Yeah.
And then, we could go on and on and on. Okay. But these were people, these were professionals that I let them try that then overnight. So let's talk about crystals. The term Orgonite first started back in the late 50s by a guy named Wilhelm Reich. He discovered some amazing things. And he walked into one of his labs in the morning, and there was a glow in the room. And instead of doing anything, he shut the door and he checked every piece of equipment because he wanted to know how that got created. He called it orgon energy, which is living energy, which you might call, I think, chi, whatever.
Yeah.
All kinds of different words. Well, he went on then to create a box, and he cured a bunch of people of cancer in several days. He put them in this box, and he was in New York, and he went into upstate New York where there were no EMFs. Well, then the FDA got a hold of him, and they said, you can't do this anymore because you're not licensed to do this. This product isn't licensed. And he said, well, I'm doing it because I'm saving people's lives. A couple of weeks later, their FBI raids him. They confiscate all of his material, and then they arrested him and put him in jail, in prison, and then he died 2 years later under questionable circumstances.
Whoa.
So in about 1980, somehow some of his documents came out, and there was a couple, a man and a woman, husband and wife, and they found his stuff, and they started to experiment with this. And if you go on Google, you'll see orgon generators, and they shoot stuff up in the sky. And I've not done that, so I can't comment on it, but I would tell you that if they make the right one, it probably works pretty well. So the basic concept of what I do is a combination of resin, crystals, and metal. If you look at old TVs and radios, the tubes had crystals in them because it conducts electricity. Okay. I mean, it's old school. Most of the people here, I mean, I've seen them. I have one in my basement from my grandpa that has the tubes in it yet. And so what happens is that the molds, and again, I'm going to pick this up to show you. You can see when I tip this upside down, the pyramid, this is how I make it. What happens is that you make it in layers because then you can put different things in. So the first layer, you put a quartz crystal, because quartz is the king or queen of all crystals. Yeah. And it's very conducive. And that's what's in those tubes. And so it's wrapped in copper or metal. Then I put a layer of crystals, and then I usually put some stuff in, and then I put metal in, and I put, I can color it, which is no significant, but it looks nice. So what happens as the resin cools, one, it gets hot, and then it contracts, and it puts pressure on the crystals. And then when the metal is in there with the crystals, it creates something called piezoelectricity. And I'll put that in the slideshow that I'm going to send to you that'll be in your show notes. I'll show you the diagram of the pyramid. Basically what's happening is the Orgonite is not shielding anything. It is mitigating the harmful effects and just making them neutral. If you look at it, the old pattern of a bunch of lines, they're up and down. And what Orgonite does is it makes it even, so it doesn't harm you. Mm-hmm. So we did this through muscle testing. We can test a pyramid, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 people. They lock hands. And then when the last person's hand goes down, that's when the field is done. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if you ever see a practitioner that does muscle testing, they can tell you how big your field is, right?
Right.
Healthy people sometimes will have a field of 6 to 8 feet. Okay. They generate that. So if you walk into that, you can actually feel it. I had a guy walk into my kitchen. I knew him. He was a friend of mine. He came to get resin for a high school experiment. And He walked into my kitchen and he was 4 feet away from that big pyramid I just showed you. And he stopped dead and he stared at it and he said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, that's one of my pyramids." He said, "It's overpowering to me." Not in a bad way. He could feel it. He's a very strong empath.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we used to do shows, I used to do a lot of shows and people would come in and they could touch them and they could feel them. And then I'd have to clean them with selenite because what these do, the crystals absorb your emotions, good and bad. And it's not intentional necessarily, but you can put some very bad things into a crystal. And so the crystals are relevant to this because the combination of the crystals and the metal and the resin contracting together create that effect. And in fact, I just did an experiment overnight because I haven't done this for a while. And again, you're going to see these in my PowerPoints, but I put a jar of water with blue dye in it. And I put a small orgonite underneath it. And I put a pyramid on top of it. And I let it freeze. And in that jar, you can see the vortex. You can see the blue vortex. It's a column. Okay. The orgonite affected the dye.
Whoa.
It's real. Now, you can YouTube this too. I mean, when I first did this, I thought these guys are just making this up. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're just making it up, right? Well, I learned that they probably, maybe some of them are, but I know I did it. I've done it now 3 times, right?
Wow.
I don't need to do it. I don't need to do it anymore, but you're going to see the one on the slideshow. That one I probably did that 5 or 6 years ago. And I did it in 2 jars next to each other. One had orgonites, one didn't. It's so noticeable. It's unbelievable. And so if you believe me, then you'll believe in this. And if you don't believe me, that's okay. Because at some point, my wife's favorite saying is, we all have free will and free won't.
Oh,
yeah.
I've never heard that before. That's fun.
If you take anything away from this, you take away this in your life in general. So anyway, the crystals. So we used to go to these shows and I had a chiropractor walk up and he picked up a pyramid. It happened to be black tourmaline. And he held it in his left hand for a little while. And he looked at me and he said, "Just so you know, I have a tingling all the way up to my shoulder." And then he picked up a citrine one. And he looked at me, he said, "I have to set these down because my body's tingling so much that I can't take it." And he bought them both, which he should have done. Okay. Realize one thing that's really important to understand is that the crystals are not crucial to the effectiveness of the orgonite when mitigating EMFs. Okay. The crystals, if you choose to believe this, have an effect on you. Okay. And we use 16 different crystals. Okay. So an example, rose quartz and aventurine are for your heart chakra. And that's my weakest chakra. Okay. And I'm just going to say this. We come at this from a Christ-based outlook. I just want to put that out there. However you want to look at this, that's okay. I just want people to understand that, my wife does clearings. She goes through the chakras, but she does this through the Holy Spirit. And we look at the crystals and and then she'll tell people, if she goes down to a root chakra and say, "You got some real problems here. You know what? You might want to get like a black tourmaline, a black obsidian, shungite, or red jasper. Those are our root chakra." And you can look this up. It's all over. You can look it up. And actually, my wife tests for this. She can test on the phone. Alex tests for this. I mean, we have a little pack. There's 16 different little flowers that have these crystals in, and then she will do her thing, okay, which you've seen.
I have a few of them, yeah. In my office. You can't see it, but my window, like I have a bunch of your pyramids in my office. I think I've shown them just last week. I posted a couple, but yeah, they're in my office, my selenite, my quartz. Like my office is a crystal haven for sure, because I love them for one. And Alex did test me for the bigger pyramids. Also, the flowers I think I've gotten was when we were at a show together, actually something here in Madison. But yeah, I mean, because I'm in and around electronics as well. In my office here, I've got the router, I've got the computer and the things. And so it not only feels fantastic, but it's also helping neutralize the airspace for me.
Absolutely.
On and off all day. So.
So I'm going to go back to Frank Springab a minute, the MFT. He created MFT and Alex worked with him really closely. Alex was actually a trainer for him. And he was in a documentary called Take Back Your Power. And you can Google this, you can YouTube. And at the 54-minute mark, he has about 4 minutes. And what he did is he put people There's no mitigation here. They just wanted to see what a smart meter did to people. And what he did is he took 20 or 30 people, he took their blood test and he put it under dark field microscopy and looked at their blood. And their blood is all perfectly round. Then he put them next to 1 foot away from a smart meter and tested their blood. And it's chaos. I figured that if I believe in my product, I should probably do the same thing, right? I mean, if you really believe in what you do, and believe it works. So I found a chiropractor in Plover, Wisconsin, and he was willing to do it. He did dark field microscopy. And so I went down there. The first time I went all by myself, and I went in and he did 3 tests. My first blood test was really bad because my blood was all clogged. Then I started taking some cell food oxidizing, and the next one was perfect. But when I went in, I paid him $100 and he looked at me and he thought I was a whack job. It was very apparent. When we were done, he said, "You're onto something here." He said, "I can see this," okay? Because he could see the difference because we did 3 tests. I sat out in his parking lot and there's no EMFs out there. I could test my meter. So there was not a lot of we had our cell phones off for 20 minutes. There's no cell towers around his building. So and Brenda would go in, I'd walk right in and he'd take my blood. We'd put it underneath the microscope. Then I would sit out in his waiting room where he had a big router. We'd open up a laptop, open up a cell phone with a hotspot, and then with a big pyramid, a pyramid that you saw here, and then a rose, sat out there for 20 minutes, went back in and had our blood tested again. Okay. Then we took the Orgonites out into the car, sat in the waiting room for 20 minutes, and then had our blood taken again. And so from the first one, and you'll be able to see this on the videos that I show you in the PowerPoint and the pictures, my blood was perfectly round. The white blood cells are working really well. And if you ever want to see something fascinating in the human body, is watch this, because these red blood cells are the size of my hand. You realize, and they're microscopic. I mean, I don't even know how big they are. They're very, very, very small, right? He's got them on this 35-inch flat screen TV on the wall. And you can see the white blood cells cleaning the blood. They're working.
Wow.
Okay. So then we go to the second blood. Oh, that's on the first one. And the second one, my red blood cells were still a little messed up. Okay. Some got a little crude. Some started to stick together. But the white blood cells were still working. They were still cleaning. Okay. And that's your immune system. Okay. So don't get confused with cleaning. That is your immune system. It's cleaning up all the stuff in your blood. The third one, my red blood cells are now looking pretty ugly. But the white blood cells are dormant. They're not moving.
Oh, no.
Okay. So here's just a fun fact to know and tell. In November of 2019, Wuhan, China, New York City, Italy, Spain, and a certain cruise ship all instigated 5G. And in the spring of 2020, those were the first 5 hotspots of COVID. Now, I want to make you all really understand what I'm saying here. I don't believe 5G causes COVID, okay? I believe that 5G compromises your immune system.
Yeah.
Okay. And those people got sick because their immune systems were compromised. And so if you look at people that are around electronics, I have office workers that sit by a router. They weren't getting any work done, brain fog, all kinds of things like that. Bottom line is, if you have some kind of mitigation, you don't have to have shielding. I'm not telling you shielding isn't a good thing. I have a couple small things. I have one for my phone. I have one underneath my laptop. But what happens when you leave the house? You need to have something all the time. If you're sitting in a restaurant today and there's 40 people in that restaurant, odds are that at least 30 of them have a cell phone on, right? Maybe on silent, doesn't matter. They're still getting pinged 1,000 times a second in 5G. And guess where those are going through? They're going through your body.
Right.
And what are they doing to your blood cells, right? Now it's not just your cell phone. Now it's everybody else's cell phone and the router that's in the restaurant. So what we did is we did 10 tests. We took 10 people. Also, then he said, this is kind of subjective. So I have something that will make this a little more objective. And that was something called an acugraph, which is an acupuncture test. And it's a graph, literally a graph. And he said, now people can actually see how this is affecting your body, not just looking at the blood. because you might look at the blood differently, but we're both going to look at a chart the same way because it's objective. And so we did that with all 10 people, and it's amazing what it did. And I didn't say this guy's name, and so I'm not going to, but here's an observation. And think about this. If you're going to go in and have some work done somewhere, blood or echographs, if you sat in his waiting room for 20 minutes before you had that done, you were already degraded.
Right.
You were going to need us. Yes, exactly. You were already going to need him. Right. I mean, he's building in clients, and I'm not saying he did this on purpose because he doesn't know.
Right.
You don't know what you don't know, and he didn't.
Right.
Know. But I just thought about this, after I did this, and I realized that all those people that were sitting there and then going in, because what this echograph is an energy test. He puts 5 probes on your hands and 5 probes on your feet, and he turns it on, then he takes readings. Again, if you don't want to believe in it, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, we're all accountable for our own health, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, as you shared, I mean, my story. I left corporate and got into holistic health. Similar, I mean, not the same reasons as Alex, but she was in corporate. I mean, we share these stories because oftentimes we're doing our life's work and our mission's work because of some warning shot or something that was fired at us from a health perspective. For me, it was heavy metal toxicity and stroke that left me paralyzed, and a couple of other things that brought an awareness to me of like, okay, I got to get both hands on the wheel of my life here on every aspect, right? And so prioritize what was going on based on the health, get the function back, do some things, but it's cleaning up the life in all sorts of ways, right? And so fast forward for me, 15 years now, we're having this conversation because we've known each other for years. I have Orgonites all over my home because I believe in their effect. I felt their effect. I know how they've impacted my body and my health. They're a piece of why my home is harmonized. People walk into our home and they're like, what feels different? Similar to your friend. They're like, what's going on here? I mean, we had a friend visit us from Nashville last year, and he didn't want to go home. Like, he was planning to stay here for 4 days. I think he was here for 10. He's like, I am sleeping the best I've ever slept. He said, I feel so much at peace. Now, granted, he lives in the city of Nashville area. He's in a condo building. So one of the things, and I know I'm kind of jumping all over here, but I got a couple of things I want to kind of shout out here. People who live in apartment homes, condos, or multi-level spaces, to your point about hotels, we're inundated with electronics and routers and TVs and Wi-Fi because you've got a large amount in a concentrated area. I remember when we lived in an apartment home for a short period of time in Madison, I said to it was temporary because we were flipping homes and we were kind of all over the place. And it was just convenient for us to be there for a bit. But I said to him within a year, I was like, we got to move. Like, I can't be by the belt line, these wires, like this traffic, this noise. I said, I feel like I'm being electrocuted every day. I got to get back into the country. And coming from Rhinelander, up north where I lived in the acreage, your body just tells you. And that's how we found our way out to this house. But our friend was like, what is going on here? And I just kind of like laughed. And he was like, no, seriously, I want to know what is in that bedroom I'm sleeping in. What is the deal in this house? And so I walked through it. I mean, our guest rooms, there's black tourmaline above the door. There's quartz crystals under the bed. There's a pyramid in the room. There's bless and release and do different energy stuff and clearings of the home. Of course, it's a very comfortable bed with beautiful sheets and all the things, but it's it's an experience here at Heller Haven. But in general, it's an energy, it's a frequency, and it's how we've neutralized the air. And so every room in our home, we've done that throughout. There's some things we can't control. Obviously, I need electricity to come in my home. I've had the battle on the phone 1,000 times with the electricity company, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So there's things that we can't control, but there's so much that we can. And the Orgonites is just one piece and component that is, I don't want to say easy, but it's so easy, right? It's so easy to bring something like this into your space. And the blood work, how interesting for people to be sitting in a restaurant and, to your point, just be continuously zapped with other cell phones, or going into a hospital or a clinic and you're sitting in the waiting room and your immune system is just being attacked. And so what I like to convey too is that we can't avoid some of these circumstances, but what we can do is we can create the most powerful space in our home and in our life and in our lifestyle so that when we're in those types of situations or out into the real world, if you will, our immune system and our bodies aren't as compromised as they could be, because we're building a stronger immune system day to day, right? You're sleeping, you're getting really good sleep and rest. So,
Right.
Okay, so those are the two things that I wanted to share. So question that I have, I know we talked a little bit about the stones. I think we covered that. And you mentioned smart meters and electronics. In our home, in our bedroom, on the second floor of our home, there's no electronics, no TVs, no nothing. What would you say are actionable items people can do and look at to like clear out, what can people do in their homes? Like if they take away a couple of action items from our conversation today.
Wire anything that you can. Okay. So if you can wire routers, if you can wire printers, I have a wireless printer in my office that just lights up my meter, my EMF meter.
Yeah.
So the only time I use it, I turn it on. I have a pyramid sitting on top of it and next to me. So it's all relative, but I'm not afraid of that, because I print it and I turn it off. Right. I have 10 pyramids in my living room. So when my kids come over to watch TV, they're going to be okay. But everybody's not like that. And one of the things I want to make sure that people understand, that Orgonites do not work in front of a router. They only work when they're by you, because you have to be in that field.
Right.
Okay. And you can't necessarily measure this other than with muscle testing. You're going to see the meter is going to show the same whether you have a pyramid next to your router or not. And I've looked at some things on the internet, mitigation companies, and what I would look for if you're going to look for something is look to see what kind of tests they do.
Right.
Because if they've done some of them have actually done brain scans, they've done MRIs and blood. And if I can see them, I would be more inclined to believe them.
Right.
And when I first went online, I had people come on and say, oh, you have crap. This is better. And it didn't have any metal in it, had crystals and resin, or it had metal and didn't have any crystals, whatever. Mm-hmm. And they'd say, well, what do you think about this one? And my comment, and this is not being arrogant, is I don't care. I only care about what I make. And I know what I make works. Okay. And so why should I care about anybody else? There's some resources. Nick Pinot, he's called the EMF guy. Yeah. And you have the book that you're going to put in the show notes, but you can Google that. He's a pioneer. He's been at this for years and years. And there's a guy from Washington State named Martin Pal. He's a professor. He wrote a 90-page book. I want everyone to be aware of something. The government knows how bad this is for everybody, and they are so owned by the telecom that they won't do anything. The last time a real study was done with cell phones was about 20 to 30 years ago, and it was done on dummies. Okay. Oh my gosh. Cell phone damage to your head. Okay. So in other words, if you're walking around with a cell phone on according to them, now realize that 20 years ago or 25 years ago, the phones were almost non-existent, right?
Well, and they were all analog.
Right. Yeah. So if you go into the hierarchy of telecom and the FCC, you will find that the guys that are in the FCC came from telecom and go back to telecom. It's just like pharma. They're all owned.
Yeah.
Captured is a better word, I guess.
Yeah.
So what happened when a guy from T-Mobile goes to run the FCC, is he going to make all kinds of regulations that are going to hurt T-Mobile? Heck no. Okay. No. I mean, I'm not criticizing anyone.
Right.
The point is that they're captured and they are not going to change anything. There was a cell tower out in California and 4 kids died of cancer within less than a year. And there was such an uproar that they took the cell tower out of the campus and then it went away. Same with San Diego State. These are all on the internet. You probably won't find them on Google. You're going to have to go to a different search engine. Okay. For one that actually tells the truth. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't. Wow. Yeah. I said that out loud.
You did. It's okay.
I'm on some, and I'm also on somebody's list now, but I'm already on their list. So there's really no issue. No concern on my part. So you said, what can I do at night? Well, you turn your stuff off. Okay.
Yeah.
And you decrease as much exposure as you can. Mm-hmm. If you have a smart TV, I believe there's a way you can disable some of those things. I like my cell phone. I love my cell phone. I know it's terrible for me. I walk around with this next to my cell phone. I have another one on my chest. Gives me 2 feet of coverage each place. I'm pretty healthy. I just want you to know my Orgonites inventory is low right now. It will be bigger in the next 4 to 6 weeks. I ran down. I was gone. Couldn't make them. There's a bunch on there, but not quite the inventory that I would like. I don't need you to buy anything, okay? And you don't need anybody to buy anything. It's your choice.
Yeah.
And if you see other Orgonites, though, look for 3 things. Look for the polyester resin.
Yeah.
And look for the metals and look for the crystal.
Yeah. That's one of the things I was going to ask is like, there's a lot of, I mean, just like anything else, there's knockoff stuff out there, right? There's things that people are creating, well-intentioned people just not maybe making the most accurate stuff and things that you can buy just online or whatever. I think there's something to be said about going to a quality, to somebody you trust, know, like, and trust, but also has this kind of research, has this kind of information, and is doing it in a much more intentional way. And that's what I want to share with people listening to is that with anything, quality over quantity, right? And find somebody that is actually creating and building whatever it is that they're looking for. And you and I were chatting too, like in regards to the saunas, this is the conversation always about buying a sauna is find one that's built with quality and intention, or you're going to cause more problems. So don't even spend the money. Don't even invest in it because you're going to be causing more health problems for yourself. This is no different. But in general, they're not all created equal. So I think people will find you. I know your website, and I'll have everything in the show notes, is loaded with this information and how to pick the right one for you, how it can help balance and harmonize the chakras, and what that all looks like. So I guess that kind of weaves me into one of my last questions here for you is, I know on your site, and I'm going to read this off my piece of paper because it literally spoke to me. And I said, you have the importance of empowering your home happiness and protection. So what does a home that heals mean to you? And how do those words feel to you?
When you walk in, you feel better and you don't know why. Okay. Just like your friend from Nashville, right? Just like from this teacher that I had in my kitchen. Okay. Yeah. They don't know why. Now, this happens to my wife all the time when she clears people, and it's the environment. Right. Plus, there's 100 Orgonites in the office, but that's beside the point. But what it is, when you walk into my house, what do I want you to feel? I want you to feel comfortable. I want you to be healthy. I don't want to have anything. So I'll bring this up because it's a mold. I'm in a group, and a lady did a presentation on mold, and it's amazing how many people are sick and die because her daughter died from mold exposure. Yeah. Okay. And you don't see it a lot of the time. What do? I mitigate it. I clean it. Okay. Bleach I used to use. Now I use bleach and vinegar and baking soda. These are all do-it-yourself things. The vinegar neutralizes it. The baking soda doesn't come back. Right. But look at all the spots where you might have water leaks. And they're all over the place. It doesn't have to be by a faucet, right? Could be coming through your roof, whatever, through a windowsill. And when someone comes into my house, I want them to leave healthier than when they came. And if they came in and they've been exposed to EMFs and they come into my house, they're not, their immune system is going to recover. Okay? Because this whole thing is about recovery. I won't say obviously because it's not obvious, but if you lived next to a router 24 hours a day, you would at some point just die because you'd get so sick because your immune system isn't working. Right. But what happens is when you walk away from that router, your innate body heals you. And the red blood cells are round again, and the white blood cells are cleaning away. With Orgonites, in my case, they never get so degraded that they don't keep working. Right. So then when I walk away from when I put my cell phone down 10 minutes later, all my red blood cells are completely perfect again. Now, maybe sometimes they're not perfect, right? Mm-hmm. But if you can make it so that when, I'm really speaking to the choir with I just talked to you, okay? Mm-hmm. The whole church, not just the choir, right? Because you understand this, right? Yeah. And one of the things about my life is I'm blessed is that I am surrounded by people that have exactly these values. It's really easy for me. It is not easy for the average person because there's so many people that think this is all hogwash, poppycock, whatever you want to call it, voodoo. Then how do you get them to go along with it, right? Because peer pressure, one of my side hats is I'm a self-sabotage coach. Yeah. Okay. And if you look at this when it comes to what we're talking about right now, self-sabotage is when you do things that the herd does because that's what's accepted. And
Right.
when you leave the herd, you and I aren't in the herd. Okay. Alex isn't in the herd. Brenda's not in the herd. We're
Right.
outliers. So we take criticism from people for not being normal. What's normal? What they're doing isn't normal. It's common.
Right. That's a good, that's a good word for it. Common. I would say I'm not common.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it. You really kind of tied the bow on that and bring up a good point. And we could talk all day about the things in our home and the ways that, the things that we can bring in, but really at the core of it too, I think is the importance of the people you're around, the life that you live. And that's one of the things that you almost can't explain, right? Like when you live a more joyful, abundant life, it's because the people and the energy and the frequency and everything, what your home, your life, your work, everything feels good. It just feels good to you. And there's trust, there's love, there's kindness, there's open-mindedness, there's great conversation. It just feels different. And so, the Orgonites is just one of the many things that I have in my home and in my life, which is why I'm so grateful for you and your conversation today.
Thank you.
Because I'm often asked, like, Jen, what do you have in your house? Like, what do you do? Like, this is one of the tangible things that you see in my house.
Right.
But really, it's all about creating an entire lifestyle of these types of things. And sometimes it feels overwhelming. I know we gave a lot to the listeners today, and people are like, well, we're going to have PowerPoints and all the things. But really, it's like, just take it a day at a time, take it a piece at a time, look at your life and prioritize, like, what do I need to look at first? For me, it's like where you sleep at night, where you spend the most amount of your time, where you're asking your body to rest and restore, or if it's your office or your space where you're in and around a lot, like start there. It's no different than your diet, like clean up the things you eat every day before you start worrying about what you eat on a one-off Friday night. But just really looking at your life as a whole and how you can harmonize and bring things into it. So I want to thank you, Steve, for your time, your generous time today and your generous information. And we're going to let everybody know where they can find you. And
could I leave you with one thought? One thought?
Please do.
Write an action plan. You write it down and you have 20 things on there. I'm going to do this and this and this. You don't do 20 things. You do one thing. And when you master it, you go to the next thing. You'll never do 20 things, ever. No one will. But you will do one thing, right? So what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to buy an Orgonite. You're going to turn your router off at night. What is the one thing that you can do that doesn't cost you maybe any money that can impact your life? Write it down, check it off, go to the next one.
That's awesome.
Okay. That's a plan. If you don't have a plan, in 3 days, you're going right back to what you used to do.
That's a fact.
Yep. So
that's a fact.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. You're the best. We'll talk to you soon. Wow. Wasn't that a fun and interesting conversation? Whether this is a new topic for you to digest or maybe you're already in the know, either way, I really appreciate Steve sharing so much information and history about how we can support a higher frequency for our health and home. His vision for creating Orgonites perfectly aligns with my vision and mission to help you create a home that heals. I'm so grateful for not only knowing him and he sharing this info with us, but for you listening and open to soaking it all in. I hope you found this conversation valuable because I'm so deeply passionate about helping you prioritize your precious sacred space, your home. Thanks so much for listening, your continued support, plus rating and reviewing the show. I'm so grateful for your love and feedback and really enjoy reading all your kind words. You're all so amazing and I appreciate you. And please don't forget to grab the home wellness checklist off the jenhellerlifestyle.com website. It's a great way to design your own sanctuary space. Until next week, my friends, cheers to health and happiness. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you. If you love this episode, please leave a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. This helps me expand my reach to other health and wellness enthusiasts. If you're interested in purchasing a Clearlight sauna, have a topic request, or just want to connect with me, please head over to my site, jenhellerlifestyle.com.